All right, so a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. This session will be recorded, shared with everyone after. You guys will be on mute throughout the entirety of the session, but we do have the Q&A panel underneath. I encourage you to please use it as much as you can. Ask all the questions that you have. We'll aim to answer them towards the end of the session. If we do run out of time, we'll ensure to follow up with you guys after and send you the answers. With that being said, thank you again, everyone, for joining, and welcome to the first episode of our Connected Recruiting series. For those of you who are still new to Connected Recruiting, this is a strategy that we introduced just about a year ago that is mainly designed to help businesses leverage technology and best practices to create better candidate experiences and help drive future growth. This series will be divided in 4 episodes. Each episode will talk about a specific stage of Connected Recruiting. And in this one, we'll talk about attract. So more specifically, how you can supercharge your business to attract and convert more applicants. In this series, we'll be talking about a lot of technologies, a lot of different strategies and best practices that you guys can implement to be more successful. But these are the key things that we want you to walk away with out of the series. What the core components of Connected Recruiting are, so you have the foundations when you start planning your Connected Recruiting strategy specific to your business. Why more and more agencies are starting to leverage this approach and implement it into their business. And of course, how can you do it as well, right? How can you put this Connected Recruiting strategy into practice? You'll be very happy to know as well that this time it won't be just me presenting. I'm actually joined by 2 amazing guest speakers, great partners of ours, thought leaders, experts in the industry, Matt and Alex. I'm going to let them introduce themselves next. Matt, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me on. Yeah, Matt Comber, CEO of SourceFlow. So I manage all the day-to-day running of the business, try and make sure we've got money and that we're growing and going in the right direction.
Hi, this is Alex. I'm president for Broadbean. Of our global teams, we have like 200 people around the world. So, and as you can tell, even though I'm based in London, I'm originally from Greece. So I'm really happy to be here, working in this space for 20 years. So I'm really enjoying.
Great, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Alex. We'll come back to Matt and Alex in just a moment. I just want to touch base for everyone who is still relatively new to the Connected Recruiting strategy and talk about why we introduced this in the first place. The initial driver behind the Connected Recruiting strategy was improving the overall candidate experience, which is a really big gap in our industry today. On our most recent talent grid surveys, we reached out to candidates and we asked them how they felt about working with agencies, what their experience has been so far. And most candidates out there have a favorable opinion about recruiters. They understand the value that agencies bring to the table. They appreciate the expertise of the recruiter in helping them find the right job, helping them land interviews for those jobs, helping them land the job itself. But when it comes to the experience, that's where we're really falling behind. 90% of candidates wish that there were an easy way to find a job. Every second candidate drops off the process because it takes too long. And 93% of talent out there prefer a more digital experience today, more similar to engaging with an online platform than anything else. And what this information is telling us is that recruitment has evolved. Our candidates, even our clients, now prefer to be engaged on their own term. They want to be communicated with through the channels of communication that they prefer and they're accustomed to. So that's why it's so important for any modern recruitment agency out there to deliver the right message at the right time at every stage of the journey. Hence, the Connected Recruiting. Connected Recruiting is exactly that. It's a strategy that can help you deliver an incredible experience at every stage of a candidate's journey. And by implementing it, you'll be able to create ever-growing and consistently engaged talent pools. You'll be able to speed up your time to hire, lower your talent acquisition costs, and for those of you who live in a contractor's world, you'll be able to increase your redeployment rates. Think of it as a flywheel effect. If it's achieved properly, Connected Recruiting can help you attract, engage, onboard, and nurture your talent while delivering that incredible experience. And these are the 4 key stages that we'll be talking about throughout the series. But it's not just about the tech. It's not about a single piece of technology. It's about the combination of the right tech for your business alongside the right best practices that can ultimately transform the way that you're engaging with your candidates today. So in this episode, we'll focus on the first stage. We'll talk about attract, how you can attract more talent, convert more applicants, and start building these talent communities. And while I'm talking about this, we're going to run a quick poll for you guys. But there are typically 3 common ways a candidate would make their way into the community. We have registrations. This is basically people signing up, in most cases, directly with you through your website. We have applicants. These are people applying for a job. Again, that could be on your website. It could be on a job board that you've partnered up with. And of course, we have sourcing. Any external sourcing that your consultants are doing today, that could be done through job boards again, LinkedIn Recruiter, other social networking websites like Zing, for example, all the efforts they're putting in to bring talent from external sources into your ATS. So in this session, we'll talk about the strategies and best practices that you guys can implement to be more successful in these areas of focus. So now we're heading into the panel. Matt, Alex, thank you both again for agreeing to join me and talk about these. The first thing that I would like to talk about, and this is probably a good starting point before we head into what businesses should be doing from a strategy and best practices perspective, is understand where we are today. So let's start by discussing what the current state of the job market is. What are some of the trends that business leaders, that recruitment leaders should be aware of today as they start to plan those strategies? And Alex, I know you had some data that you wanted to share with us. So would you like to go first?
Yeah, thank you.
I'll go to the next slide for you.
Yeah, all right. So obviously we are, witnessing another change in a labor market, which has been very turbulent the last years, right? So as we see, this is a chart that shows kind of like collective clients data in the UK, which represents, as you see, hundreds of thousands of jobs every month and millions of applicants, right? And we've seen that, immediately after the pandemic, we had, a huge increase of people looking for jobs. Then we had the crash of the Great Reset, as we called it, with companies finding really difficult employers to find candidates. And now we are, I think, entering a new phase. And the phase is like that from the, I would say, back half of last year, we start seeing, UK jobs being very kind of like stagnant, not really increasing. The amount of jobs that are going in the market, it's pretty stable. And the amount of applicants that are available to answer those jobs are increasing, going back, I would say, to the pre-pandemic levels that we're used to. So we had a very difficult 2021 for employers where they couldn't find, enough applicants. It started getting better this year. Now we're going back to a situation where I would say it's a very balanced labor market with a lot of applicants. As you mentioned, this is a process that applicants don't like, has a lot of stress. I remember an old survey that was saying it's the second most stressful thing in life, finding a job after losing someone close to you. So definitely it's going to be a market where I think employers and recruitment agencies will focus from finding really applicants. They will have more of them, on managing their costs and making sure that they find the best possible candidate. So we focus from, I would say, the quantity of the application to the quality of the application.
That's very interesting.
And the same thing, I would say, we said the broadband data for UK, but the same thing applies globally. I think LinkedIn posted this research a couple of days ago, and it shows like the decline of hiring activity compared to a year ago. I think all the events triggered from the war in Ukraine and everything, really suppressed the labor markets. And that's something that's like happening across the world, that you can see in this thread pretty much everywhere from Asia to North America to Europe. We can see the decline of hiring activity, which makes it really important to really find processes that are faster, they cost less, and they're more effective in finding the needle in the haystack, right? The right applicant at the right time with the right skills.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Alex, and it's very closely connected to the feedback that we've been seeing from our recruiter grid reports, especially the most recent ones that we got. Even recruitment agencies in the past historically will have either talent acquisition or winning new business being in the top priority, with the other one falling further behind. But especially for our region in the UK and in Ireland, we're seeing that winning new business and acquiring new talent are both on the top of the priorities list, and businesses are changing the way they work. We're even starting to see a lot of agencies, especially the ones who are leveraging automation, who are focusing on having the right engagement strategies. They're moving away from that mindset of just having a database of candidates. They're moving away from the quantity, and they really start to focus on having that quality. They start building those talent communities, people who they already have part of that community, build engagement strategies around them. So that's very interesting, and it's closely aligned to what we're hearing from customers as well. Matt, what about you? What are your thoughts? What are some of the insights and trends that leaders should be aware of from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the good news is that it's probably a continuation of that conversation. So I don't have like a completely polarizing view there, which is usually a good thing when we talk about trends. I think from from our side of things, and what we see is Alex mentioned it there, it's the drive to decrease the cost for external sources largely. Like we see a lot of that. And, again, what you were saying there, Eric, our customers, we build websites, we kind of build digital experiences for our clients, for recruitment agencies, and they have a multitude of users that come to those websites. So they'll have job seekers, they'll have clients, they'll have potential hires for their own business that come. And I think the goal that we're seeing more and more of is moving away from this kind of like kind of mass market job spree that people have been on, where it's just been, well, just throw something at a job board and it will work, we'll drive people in. The problem with that is intrinsically that if a candidate exists on that job board, largely speaking, that candidate's available for everybody on that job board to CV search with most job boards. And what we're seeing is this kind of move to just bring that IP and ownership of, like you said, the word community, build that back within the career site, within the recruitment website that we would build. And then you have the kind of, you kind of almost exclusivity at that point on that candidate's data. And it's not just candidates, you said it's kind of 50-50 about winning new business and candidate attraction. It goes exactly the same for bringing clients back to websites and to those, to kind of the web platforms that we provide for people. There's a huge shift for that. And off the back of that, it's things like then attribution, revenue reporting, what happens with those applications when, are we placing these people? There's a huge focus on that. So yeah, I'd probably just echo what's been said in that our customers absolutely want to reduce external cost, but they really want to kind of drive this kind of like ownership and this kind of one-to-one experience, almost like the consumerization of it rather than this kind of mass market aggregation of it. I think that's kind of the key driver that we see.
Yeah, these are some great insights. And just to continue on that while I still have you, what are some of the go-to strategies then that businesses should be applying to help them attract more candidates, to increase applicant conversion with the website strategy?
Yeah, so I mean, some of the stuff is obvious, right? And it's just about building good marketing strategies around it. So a marketing strategy is usually kind of multifaceted. It'll be omni-channel in what you do. So there isn't just one thing there. I'd say, just go to LinkedIn and you're going to get everything you need, unless that's where all of your market lives and that's where they sit. And then it's a good strategy. I think, things like, obviously just niching down your job boards is important, and kind of making sure you're getting that return. Social media strategies as part of that is key for the kind of attraction side of things. Search engine optimization is one that we every single person who comes to speak to us will speak about search engine optimization, but there just has to be a realization, I think now, and I'm pretty opinionated on this, that search engine optimization does not work for quite a lot of recruitment agencies, because the search engines are so heavily dominated by massive job boards who are putting millions and millions of pounds and dollars into their own search engine optimization and paid media. So if you want to compete against some of these like really hyper aggressive keyword terms, the reality is you're not going to see that. So you then start to go for this kind of like law of diminishing returns, where you have to do like longer tail strategies and things like that. SEO is just part of a strategy, and it's probably becoming less of a part of a strategy, especially if we move into kind of AI world. Once somebody's on the website, again, AI actually comes into use a lot. So we do a lot of machine learning and AI kind of tooling over the website. So our job board, kind of job search area, if you like, of the websites for our customers is powered by machine learning. So it's got an AI engine, and it'll do things like it will understand that biz dev is actually business development, which is related to sales development. It understands that kind of natural language side of things. And that's then all about creating this better matching criteria for job seekers. So yeah, what we're looking at very heavily is, we want to drive people to these websites for our customers, but then let's make an incredibly beautiful experience. Let's make it kind of seamless in terms of how they find the right jobs. And then let's make that application kind of super slick. And then you're into integration and passing it off from there. So yeah, I'd say, you to kind of summarize the strategy for your marketing inbound needs to be very blended, but then once somebody's on your actual asset, your website, there are many ways you can do that to improve that experience.
Yeah. So the focus is not just to get them there, it's about keeping them there and keep them coming back, right?
Yeah, we've all been on terrible websites and jumped straight off terrible websites. And, part of the stress and the pressure that we have is making sure that that experience for that user, be it a client, a candidate, or a consultant that arrives on that website, is specific, it's timely, it's relevant, and then that they can kind of convert ultimately and we can place or employ these people.
Yeah. And for our attendees here that are looking to implement these kind of strategies, what are some of the metrics that they should be using to measure the success of these strategies?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to work back from a goal. So I'm a business owner and I have business goals, and I think good business will have business goals in place of some sort, and they could be macro goals about increasing revenue, or they could just be micro goals about increasing eyes on your product, on your business. So I think you've got to work back really from the end of where you want it to be, and then pull back from there. So then you're going to start to get into things like attribution modeling. Which source drove this candidate, or which sources are driving kind of the most candidates and applications to my business, and then actually taking that a step further to what we call revenue analytics. And that's where we can jump into the CRM system and pull the data out on placements to say, actually, this person did convert from a Salesforce website, but actually before that they came from LinkedIn, or they came through XYZ. And then we can start to say, well, how much money did that source create in that period of time? And that's going to then give you maybe a bit of an eye-opening experience to show maybe some free sources that you have that are driving revenue to you that you didn't even know about potentially. So we hear about, I get 90% of my applications comes from Indeed, but actually sometimes we look at that and go, but you didn't place anybody from it. And in this 10% of the other stuff is where the actual placements are coming from. We see that quite a lot. So yeah, start with your goal and then go through things like attribution modeling, source tracking, to basically build this kind of end-to-end revenue visibility. They're the things that I think people need to be looking at.
That's great. Thank you. And Alex, very similar question to you as well. What are some of the go-to strategies that you would recommend from an attraction perspective when it comes to job advertisements?
Yeah, I'd say first things first, every agency needs to think about all the media that they have available, right? Their own media, the websites that Matt Teams is building for them, their paid media, whatever advertising they pay for, and their earned media, right? Social media, employee review sites, all that stuff that can also generate interest for them. And I think they have to really focus on three things right now. One, the first strategy that we advise everyone is start with the content, right? Optimize your job content. We live in an age where everybody talks about the ability to generate a lot of content with ChatGPT and great job descriptions and address the basics, right? And what we are seeing in the market very clearly is a demand for pay transparency and workplace agility, right? So that's very clear. This is the type of basic information that candidates are asking, and you need to address it one way or the other for you and your clients. I think that's the first important part. And the second is optimize your whole outreach effort, right? Right now, with the evolution of programmatic advertising, getting your jobs placed in the best possible media, trying new angles, trying new publishers, new job boards is becoming easier. So the key thing for me, every agency there is strike a balance. Matt insinuated to that, what you don't want to be is in a situation of a monopoly or a duopoly, all my money goes to Indeed and LinkedIn, for example, right? A lot of clients, when we have this discussion, is are you agreeing that in the future you'll be pretty much handing out blank checks, right? If you only have one or two sources of applications and you are a recruitment agency, you will be very much in the dependency situation, and you want to avoid that. So balance it out as much as you can using niche, using free media, using aggregation, using programmatic advertising. That's really important. And the key thing, with the technology employed, that you can save time for your recruiters, you can control your costs better, and you have to use the technology one way or the other. Services like Broadbean and others to take advantage of all those opportunities to save time. This is a process that really should be, in the next 5 years, I would say almost 100% automated, putting your jobs out in the market in your postings. The third thing, and I think Matt said this, is don't forget what you have already paid for, the candidates and the relationships you have created. You have to be very clear of how your hiring workflow starts from re-engaging past candidates, and not assuming that consultants will do it, but create a workflow that this is easy. Technology can surface the past candidates in front of them before they go out, spend money, post, starting with, searching. Even search is really a process that can be pretty much automated and make it really easy to deploy. And obviously, the whole communication with those candidates at those early stages and collecting all the necessary information can be automated as well. So I would say those three things, optimize your job content, automate and speed up your posting process while controlling the cost and the time, and don't forget the clients you have engaged in the past.
So you gave us three strategies there. Now let's talk about how do we measure that success. What are some of the things that leaders should be doing to measure the success of this strategy, and maybe what are some of the things that they're not doing that are sometimes forgotten that they should really be focusing on?
Yeah, I think as you said, like the important thing for me is it's really easy to focus on the quantity metrics, right? How many applications I collect, what's my cost per click or my cost per application. If we look at the advertising side, eventually, what Matt said, the placement data, how many placements do I get from each individual source? These are important, but first steps for me, like we have to go further than that. We have to look down funnel to the quality of the whole process, right? And so beyond that, I think it's really, you need two types of metrics. You need some, what we call early signal metrics, that the candidates that I'm attracting are the right ones. And when I'm saying early signal, sometimes waiting for the placement data is too late to pretty much decide where do you want to put your effort, right? So you want things like, I think the first, kind of like quality metrics recruitment agency should know is like people that end up in shortlists, candidates that are ending up in shortlists and interviews. If you get them there, if you get those types of candidates that progress through the process, this is an early enough signal that you can also redesign your posting process, your programmatic advertising effort. The second thing is really look at quality metrics. Obviously, the source of candidates has to be very clear all the way down to who's hired. But also look at quality metrics when it comes to time spent per recruiter, right? Or things like that you really want to understand how much time or how much effort I'm putting in this process, right? And how much time do we spend talking to candidates and clients? And I think that's another key area where recruitment leaders should focus. But as I said, like start with the basics, have all your attribution and sourcing clear, start looking at things like cost per interview, cost per shortlisted candidates, and eventually cost per placement, and you're on the right track.
I think one of the things that both you and Matt mentioned were think about what you already have, right? Focus on the talent. That should be your first priority. And it's actually quite interesting because not only that, even when it comes to multi-posting and being able to speed up the process that should be automated as much as possible, the same will go with sourcing, right? Think about all the different places that consultants would typically have to go to get candidates from these external sources. And that's probably one of the leading reasons why we acquired SourceBreaker last year. It's the fact that we wanted to provide our customers with a way to have a centralized way to just find these candidates from multiple sources, job boards, but also Bullhorn, right? While you're looking in those job boards, remove that duplication of adding the same person into your system twice because they're already there. And I was actually shared some interesting data that is also a little bit worrying around that. We did some research internally and we analyzed, I think it was 7.8 million placements, random placements on the Bullhorn data centers. And it turned out that more than 70% of those placements were made with candidates that were not submitted with a source saying Bullhorn. These means that they came from an external source, right? But what's even more interesting is that out of those 70% of candidates that were acquired externally, 66.5 were already existing candidates in Bullhorn. So that means that money was spent.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Money was spent more than once to acquire the same candidate, over 3.5 million times out of those 7.8 million placements that were made. So almost every second candidate you have paid more than once to get when you place them. So this is something that for the attendees, we'll expand more on the second episode of Connected Recruiting, where we focus on engaging your existing database. But it's just something to be mindful of when you think about multi-posting, when you think about your website strategy and how to attract talent. You should really think about what you already have as well and work on that being your top priority first.
There is just one thing, and I might get that statistic tattooed to me because I've been kind of preaching that for a number of years. So I'm glad that you've been able to do it. Yeah, I mean, to agree with it, and I am sometimes cautious about the kind of commoditization of the recruitment process. But if you look at it kind of like a logistics company or like an e-commerce store, for example, if you as a user, so if you put yourself in your own shoes, you go to a website and you try and buy something, right, whatever it might be, a pair of trainers from that website. If it says sold out, you don't come off the internet and then stop looking for it. You then run a Google search or you do something else to try and find that inventory. And quite often, I think that's why recruitment agencies don't look at how they're managing their communities of people, i.e. the CRM system, right? They think, oh, every time a job comes in, it's a new search, it's a fresh search every time I do it. But actually, they probably have people in that database straight away who can solve that problem. And in the meantime, those agencies that don't think like that, that do instantly hit their database, are on the phone talking to their clients about the exact candidates that they've been working with. They're the ones that are making the placements faster because they're actually just being more intelligent about using their own inventory to actually make those placements. So it doesn't surprise me. Maybe the volume of it surprises me slightly, but yeah, it's something that we as an industry have to get better at this. And I think we will, and I think we are getting better, but obviously there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it all goes. Sorry, Alex, go on.
It's one of the key things that we say to clients. Like we have this product called Talent Search, which is about easily searching and surfacing candidates from all your past roles, and even across different roles, right? You might have a candidate applying for a role, 3 years ago, that based on his skill set and where he is today, like he could fill a completely different role, right? So it's really important. And with searching and matching and the ability to really match a candidate to a job, we're using technology that is also partnering with both like tech scanners to really, surface the best possible matches for each job, really, and in a way that consultants can go with the best matching candidate to the least matched candidate, right, and spend their time diligently. So I think that's a really basic strategy, and I agree 100%. Like sometimes when we see the statistics on our client accounts, very, very similar to what you said, they keep buying people that they already have access to.
Yeah, when it starts piling up, that's when it becomes an eye opener, right? When you see these kind of figures that are just scary sometimes.
I mean, if you applied the average, and Alex will probably be able to get this, but the average cost for a job board advert, 3.6 million times. There's probably a couple of 100 million in wasted spend, right? Like when you kind of scale it up. So yeah, it is a scary stat.
Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about strategies to attract candidates, and you guys gave us some really, really good insights here. Now, I wanted to talk about candidate experience as well. That's, as we've been just talking about until now, it's a very big gap in our industry. I spoke about it earlier. Candidates demand nowadays a better experience. They demand to be engaged on channels of communication that they prefer. And I've spoken at length about this from an automation perspective, from an omni-channel engagement perspective as well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. What are some of the things that you think leaders can do to provide a great experience for candidates from day one, from the moment they're attracted, whether it's the website or the job boards, now that they're part of that community? Alex, would you like to take this one first?
Yeah, I'm sure Matt has a lot more to say on that part. But for me, the key thing that's very clear is like you can make the initial steps of the process really easy for them, right? There's all these apply frameworks that you can make it really easy for people to, in the initial stages, to supply their applications, and those to be really informing the process later on, right? We are now, looking at things like LinkedIn's Apply Connect, a framework that allows you even to pull a lot more data than just a CV on a candidate, right? Really understand, the skills they have, the certification, the qualifications they get as well. So all this process of like really getting the information, parsing it, putting the information inside the bullhorn and understanding the quality of the candidate, giving a signal of how close they match to the jobs, and sending, all your questions out on all the information that the candidate wants to a chatbot or to an automated screening process. I think these are things that are really making the life of the candidate a lot easier, and they are easy to deploy, and the technology is there today, right? You have the I see every release schedule the new automation tools that you offer for those types of processes, and I think that's something that every recruiter should use.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about that from an automation perspective very often. If you put yourself in an applicant's shoes, right? You apply for a job, what typically happens? Thank you for applying. We'll be in touch soon. And then that kind of has to wait for days, weeks until somebody gets back to them. So you're absolutely right. Introducing that first layer of qualification for the candidate via survey or chatbot interaction is number one, creating a better experience because they don't have to wait around, but it's also sifting through the noise, right? Those candidates, depending on the answers that they give, could be moved further in the process. They could be auto-rejected. So even from a productivity perspective, the consultants are now dealing with a smaller quantity but higher quality of talent that are better fit for that job. And you do have an aftercare strategy for the ones who were rejected, maybe point them towards other opportunities you might be working. But it's just creating a full cycle of improving the experience from an application perspective. Matt, what's your thoughts from the website side of things? How do you think we can create better experiences there?
Well, so we try to create digital experiences that either qualify in or out. And so I always think there's a lot of pressure on us in this part of the process to get that right. And it's a deep understanding and years and years and years of experience, right? It's not our first rodeo. And yeah, we've kind of worked on this for a long time to become experts in it. But, a lot of our role is about, it's actually slightly different than the Broadbean role, right? And Broadbean's job, I guess, is kind of, sending the jobs out so that people can find it and then direct it back to, ideally, to a recruitment website, to kind of start that, as I was talking about earlier, that kind of community view. But we need to make sure that once that person hits the website, that we understand the needs of that user, whoever they are. And we're dealing with lots of different users, and we don't know who that person is, right? It's not like there's somebody who modifies the website on the fly. I wish that was a thing maybe in the future, but we can do certain things, but we can't do that just yet. But we're under that pressure, and I think what it comes down to, it's about combining really good technology. That's our job, right? To build this amazing technology with that kind of messaging and that brand and that experience and that feel. What it's like when you go into a shop or a store, or you go to a website, you sometimes you get that emotional connection to something straight away. And quite often the best digital experiences are the ones that combine seamless technology with that feel, like that smell when you walk into a certain hotel that you like to stay at, and you're like, oh, I'm home. It's that thing. and then the check-in's easy, and you're like, yeah. And that's that combination of that emotional against that kind of technical, physical side of things. And that's really where we have to sit on things. And I think the better agency, the one that combine that really well, and it kind of works quite nicely together. So yeah, I think it's about that kind of combined experience, about the emotional and then the technical. And I think that's what we spend all our time trying to do effectively for our clients.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised, to be honest. I mean, when you think about it, there's a lot of pressure on the recruitment businesses as well, right? First impressions are so important. And I think we spoke about this at Engage last year in November, where if a candidate hasn't had a great experience the first time around, they're 6 times more likely to go to another agency just because of that poor first experience. So that's why the impression is so important. And I can imagine there's a lot of pressure from a website perspective and job advertising perspective to make sure you are showing that great impression from the very beginning. All right, that was great. You gave me and the attendees a lot of things to think about. Now, the exciting part, I was recently asked this as well. What's coming next? I was on a webinar with Jump Advisory, and they asked me, what do I see as the next big thing in automation? And of course, AI is, we all know, it's going to be one of the big waves that's going to hit the recruitment world. Maybe in the long run, maybe it's closer than we think. Self-service is one of the things that I personally think as well will become more and more important for candidates, give them that experience where they can self-manage their profiles and their careers. But from your perspective, Matt, I want to stay with you here. What do you see as the next evolution or the new wave in technology performance for recruitment websites?
Yeah, so it's AI. Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly. Yeah, it's we've had years of what would probably be classed as like ANI, this kind of artificial narrow intelligence. And if you imagine that as like a computer that can play chess, is a good way of looking at it. And we've lived in that world for years. And when that started, people were like, oh, I don't think it'll ever beat anybody. And then it beats Gary Kasparov years ago in a game of chess. And then, you use chess on your computer, and it's that kind of really narrow, weak AI. It's known as engine. And it's taken us a long time to move out of that, but we are out of that now into what would be kind of more commonly known as AGI, this kind of artificial general intelligence. And that's where we sit right now. And it just hasn't been something we've really had commercial access to until the likes of Bard, ChatGPT have come out, other kind of engines. So from our side of things, we're now classifying ourselves as this, as like an AI recruitment marketing platform is where we look at it. And we've plugged AI right into the center of the whole thing. So from the job search through to the experience from Bullhorn, we're doing a lot of work with Bullhorn on that side of things. And then looking at how to make that a better experience for job seekers. So like AI through CV writing, things like that, which exists, you can do now. But make no mistake, this is the future, and the future is now. It's that kind of cliche, like we are living in this right now. And you only have to look at Google's events that they recently launched, where every single item that they spoke about on that keynote was about AI in their business. They didn't talk about, oh, we're doing this thing with glasses. And no, it was all about AI engines and how that's going to improve every single aspect now as an overlay on top of their product. So this kind of seamless experience. So without a doubt, this is the future of recruitment and recruitment marketing, where I live in, and kind of my category. It is absolutely the future, and it's happening right now. There's no roadmap, like there is no roadmap for AI, but that's where we are. I think maybe longer term, we might see some stuff in our space around Midjourney and the kind of AI stuff specifically for designing websites. I could see that being something that starts to move out of just, creating images, and it moves to more experience related stuff, which then might output code. And then that code could be used to kind of build websites. I don't think it's ever going to replace the full creative experience that we have in our mind, but it will get close, right? It will really help along that path. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's maybe 5 to 10 years from now, like that kind of scope. But, I think ultimately we have AI right now, and this is now breakneck speed. You're going to see the advancement in the next 12 months faster than arguably we've ever seen a tech advance. So yeah, I think that's where we live. That's kind of our thing, and what we're trying to help our customers through.
Very interesting. You'll certainly help drive productivity, even from a creative perspective, what you mentioned with Midjourney, right?
100%. Yeah, that's going to be the thing, right? Taking away the time saving tasks and maybe allowing us to talk more than we used to. Maybe that's a novel concept.
That's great. Alex, what do you see as the next big thing in job advertising?
Yeah, I agree 100% on the principle and the base concept. In a couple of weeks from now, we make an announcement to make it very clear how much I agree, I think, with Matt on that statement. We really focused. I would say the only difference that I would say is like we are looking about more kind of focused use of AI for hiring, right? So I believe besides the general engines like ChatGPT or the general language models, that we'll have to start by using it in a very focused area. So for us, it's very simple, right? The first, I would say, 2 areas we're looking to deploy that. One is in the simple to collect the simple answer of where should I post my job and at what cost, right? So really predicting which channels will bring the best positive, the best possible response and at the best possible cost for the client. So that's the number one. Today, we have all the data. If a client asks us, for this type of candidate, let's say in healthcare in the UK, where should I put my jobs? We can pretty much define the publishers in order of priority, right? But it's really getting now to even a deeper level about the skills that they are particularly want for their organization. And the second part, I think it's this whole area of communication at the early part of the application, right? If we see it's a simple exchange of information, applicant submits a profile or a resume, recruiter needs to ask some questions, applicant needs to kind of like collect also some extra information about the job that might not be in the job description. These early exchanges can really be addressed asynchronously. You don't need to be at the same point at the same time. You don't always need to get like on the phone to have like a conversation just to understand, what are the working hours or, if you have this specific certification, from the other side that's needed for the job. This type of Q&A process, I think you will see like chatbots that are becoming smarter in collecting this information and filling those applications a lot faster, right? So I think that's where we focus our energy and our future. And as I said, like in a couple of weeks, you understand how deeply we are invested in deploying AI for the product.
Oh, nice. We'll be looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I will.
All right. Well, Matt, Alex, thank you both very much for this one. I think we can both agree that we can all agree that we've discussed some very interesting topics. You gave us some very useful insights here, and the overall summary is that the focus nowadays is on quality, not quantity, right? Just to re-summarize, businesses are moving away from that mindset. The focus is no longer about just having a database of records. Candidates who are most likely completely disengaged with you, have no idea who you are as a business, and just sit there and don't provide you with any value, but also you're not providing them with any value either, right? So the focus now is moving towards that quality. It's about creating those communities, being able to engage with all the candidates you already have at different stages of the journeys, regardless of where they are. It could be your most passive talent. It could be the candidates who have just applied for a job, the ones who have just registered through the website, and they're now being considered for specific roles. But having an engagement strategy with everyone consistently will ensure that, for one, you're engaging with your entire community, but also you're enabling your community to engage back with you when the right time comes, when the right opportunity comes along. So with that said, let's head into Q&A. I'm just gonna pause for a second and see what questions we have. I think we had quite a few. Bear with me one sec. Okay, so first question, Alex, I think this one is for you. How can I evaluate if I am over-dependent on a candidate source? How should I evaluate different advertising options like social media, job boards, and so on? What would be your advice there?
Yeah, I would say an easy rule of thumb is like if we see and I'm not saying that we have to be unreasonable. If we see the global advertising market right now, there are two players that control almost 50% of that market around the world. Everybody knows about them. Not surprising, everyone said that's Indeed and LinkedIn. But what I'm saying is that if an easy rule of thumb is like if those players control more than 50% of your application flow, you have to think that you are working in a kind of a monopolistic situation, right? So I would look, at the different sources that I have and holistically, like how many applicants I get from my website directly, how many I get from the job boards, how many I get from social media activity, and try to balance out those sources, right? To not get in a situation where we have a single source that commands more than 50% of my applicant flow. So yes, I can understand, when those two sources to get up to 25% or 30% of your applicant flow, but over that threshold, I think it starts becoming dangerous if you don't have other sources to balance.
And I think there is a follow-up to that one as well. What to look for when choosing between a multi-posting solution and or a programmatic advertising platform? Yeah.
I think the key thing is optionality, right? So the approach that we are taking with Broadbean is that we want to offer both, pretty much based on the client's demand. If we look at the advertising market today, I don't think you can do one or the other. I don't think it's the right approach, because if you see, depending on the markets you operate, I think the only 100% mature programmatic market in the world right now is North America, US. And even there are like you'll be missing key audiences and advertising channels if you only deploy your budget programmatically. So I think you need to find a solution that kind of like allows you to do both, and be able to, based on the region, the target audience, the type of skills that you are chasing, be able to deploy one or the other. That's my advice. The second thing that I would say is trusted global minded partners, right? We have enough fragmentation, I think, in the recruitment technology industry, too much. And I think the important thing, and obviously your clients have the right step, right? Choose a marketplace and choose players that integrate with each other, and don't try to stitch up together too many point-to-point solutions. I try to find like a ecosystem of recruitment technology that works together, integrates, and keeps the data and the source attribution in one place. So you'll be able to pull out reporting that actually tells you something in the end, right? That's the The other mistake that I see a lot is people like using systems that don't talk to each other and end up like, on mayhem of getting data together to decide what they need to do.
That's great. Thanks, Alex. And Matt, I think the next question is for you. Should I prioritize SEO over job board advertising? I want to bring down costs, and many digital agencies are saying that this is the best way of doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but the reality is it going to work? That's kind of how I look at things. I've actually got a book behind me called "Does It Work?" and it's about exactly this, right? What is going to work for you as a business? My honest answer is, and I'm going to answer it with an AI related answer. So a couple of days ago, I decided to build a full SEO strategy using ChatGPT 4, and it took me about 10 minutes, and actually was able to output it as code. Like JSON file, so I could input it into a system and build web pages with full meta titles, descriptions that were fully SEO optimized with content, including landing page and keyword strategy. It took me about 10 minutes. And this is the stuff that agencies have probably been selling off the back of for 15, 20 years. Previously, that has cost a lot of money, right? And I'm going to be inundated with complaints now from SEO consultants who've watched this and people who work in SEO agencies. But the reality is times are changing right around this. And SEO will change massively. Google's keynote talked about how they were going to look far less at like thin blog content and like just content generally, because they're able to provide a search now which actually just answers things and provides results based around the individual questions and tailors the answer on the fly rather than having to return web pages. So my view is that a lot of people sell SEO because it sounds great, give me some money and we can drive some more job traffic. The reality is that it's not as effective still, in my mind anyway. It's still not as effective as a tool as job board advertising, in particular programmatic advertising. I don't think it's, in my kind of pragmatic brain and engineer brain that I have, it's not as a one-to-one source that I would use it as. I would use programmatic over it and prioritize that. We have said it's probably down to having like an array of different tools, like an omni-channel approach to things. You want that pie to be quite evenly sliced, I guess, between different sources for sure. Alex very eloquently talked about that kind of domination of 50% of the market being owned, and if 50% of your X comes from Y. So I would say that there are other ways than SEO that I would prime people for to be driving job seekers into their website. And I would actually look at that as probably a very minor, long-term strategy, if at all.
That's great. Thank you. Sorry, Alex.
I will agree that you cannot do one thing. Like I was running job boards for 15 years, right? What job boards trying to do is always balance between, acquiring traffic, SEO, and PR and outreach and social media to attract kind of like end audience, right? I don't think that there is an agency in the world that should do like just one thing. I think all recruitment leaders, they should think along the three lines. How am I attracting audiences, and balance again? The balance for me is the key word. Like if you do only one thing, if you put all your money like one basket, be it SEO or job advertising, I don't think that would work. I think you need to find a balance.
Yeah, it's the same way as if your business strategy. If your business strategy relies on one large customer, like history is strewn with failed companies who had one large account that cancelled for whatever reason, and it's usually a very random reason that you never saw coming. That customer pulls, the next minute the business goes under. I don't think you should be looking to run businesses where you have that. You've got to spread your risk, or at least spread your attention these days. That's how you run a successful business.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Thanks to both of you. I do see we have a question in the chat as well that Matt, you already answered. Thank you for that one. What type of technology out there is there to help engage with the existing database autonomously? Bullhorn automation would be one, of course. We are going to expand on this one in more detail on the next episode, Curtis. So I highly recommend you join. It's going to be in June. And we'll discuss a lot more use cases of how you can leverage omni-channel communication. So not only emails, HTML emails, but text-based emails, chatbot interactions, SMS, now that it's increasing in demand with the younger generations, how you can combine all these things to create a seamless experience, both externally and internally. So make sure you join the next episode for that one. All right. Well, Matt, Alex, thank you both very much for your time. It's been a great session. We ran slightly
Pleasure.
over, but I'm very glad because I think we discussed some very useful things that our attendees will hopefully implement. So on the next episode, we'll be discussing the engage phase of connected recruiting, how you can master your talent engagement strategy, and what technologies you can further leverage. Automation aside, we will talk about automation, of course. What other technologies can you leverage to create greater candidate experiences, client experiences, and employee experiences? So with that said, thank you all. The recording will be shared with everyone after. Any questions that we weren't able to answer, of course, we'll make sure to follow up with you.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for staying around.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.